Masking is the process of hiding one object from another. It goes back to early painting, in fact, cave painting, where the cavemen would put their hand up on the wall and blow paint or pigment, and their hand impression was left on the wall on pure stone because the pigment went around their fingers. That's masking. And back in animation, when they were working on cells, you would make sure to mask off part of what you were working on. So if you were working with an airbrush or painted acrylics, you could easily keep paint away from the rest of the cell that was being worked on. Well, let's see how it works inside of Anime and give you a better idea of why or how you might want to engage this. Masking also functions with layers. So the first thing I want to do is build up some layers to demonstrate this. This very first one, layer 1, I'm going to double click on it. And let's rename this something like Mask Base, just to keep things clear. I'll add a new vector mask. And let's just call this Additional Shape. Now a masked area can have multiple shapes and it needs to be in layers. I want to add one more thing just for clarity. Let's go ahead and add an image. If you have access to the working files, go ahead and pull in Businessman PSD. Now this is a Photoshop file or Photoshop document that's all on one layer, so it will import as one layer. I'm going to scroll out of my scene a little bit using the mouse wheel. I'll get this guy down to a reasonable size here and then zoom back in. Now I've got 3 layers. We need to nest these inside of a group because the group chief layer or main layer option is going to dictate how the masks function successfully. So we'll come back to our new layer tab or item and we'll come down and click group. And all group is a folder. So I'll just name this masking group. With that done, I'm going to shift click select all of these and drag them into the masking group and release. The first thing we need to do now is to go ahead and draw our other shapes so everything begins making sense. On the mask base, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a rectangle. And then on additional shape, I'm going to draw another rectangle. Now to keep these things separated so we can understand what's going on, let's come back to mask base. I'll come over to the select shape tool, select that back panel there, and let's change the color here to something like red, brilliant red, something we can see. Okay, I click off of that. Now here's our objects. I'm going to take our businessman and move him to about right here, just so we can keep track of what's going on. I'll come to the masking group, and now that we've got everything in order, we can start working. But the first thing we have to do is designate this group as a masking group. You can double click on the layer, or you can click on the little button here with 3 dots, the ellipsis, and expose our layer settings. We'll come to the masking tab, and the first thing we want to do is turn on hide all, and then choose OK. We'll see right away that this second additional shape has disappeared, and we see our character disappearing above and below this. So this back shape is what everything masks to. It won't extend beyond the edge, so this is confining everything we want. So the businessman, for example, since he's on the top layer, this could be a window that he winds up animating through as he walks by that. But now let's look at some of the other masking controls to get a better idea of how these function then. I'm going to come down to additional shape, double click on it, masking, and now we'll look at some of the options that we have to work with. Let me scroll this over here. I am right clicking the drawing area there so I can move that real easily. The first thing I want to do is just explore some of these. We'll come down to the bottom, clear the mask, then add this layer invisibly to it. It's going to recalculate the mask, that's what the clearing does, but then this additional shape layer, it's going to add it to it, just like it says. We'll click apply. Now you can see it in action. So the red shape remains, the white shape, the additional shape disappears, but now we've got a character that could show up. Let's say, for example, I'll choose OK. Come to our businessman. If we had an animation where he walked by here, but then he wanted to stick his head up into something, we could make him disappear in that. But you'll notice the mask right here is disappearing himself. So let's look at some of our other options. I'll come back to additional shape, double click on it, masking. We can say clear the mask, then add this layer to it. That does just what it says. You see all the layers, but we see our character above is now masking to both shapes. Or we can say subtract from the mask, this layer will be invisible. And click Apply. And now it inverts, so we're only seeing part of our character. The options now are starting to become a little more obvious. There's ways to hide and reveal object shape characters very easily inside of Anime Studio Pro. The most functional one here is probably going to be Add to Mask, but keep invisible. And I click Apply there. Now our character outside of this rectangle is disappearing, but inside of the main mask, the furthest one down in the stacking order, he's visible. So these other options, Add to Mask, are just that. They show up and adds to it like that, or we can say don't mask this layer, which means, well, just have to click and see. That's what it does. But there's some very cool ways to go ahead and start creating, revealing, hiding objects inside of your Anime Studio Pro scenes.